Genesis 2:7 says, God breathed life into Adam, and man became a living soul. Stop right there. Most readers picture a ghost stepping into a body at the moment of birth. This picture never came from the Hebrew text sitting in front of Moses. The word behind soul here is nephesh, and nephesh never meant a separate spirit trapped inside skin. The body and soul split came later, from Greek thinkers, not from Moses. So what did the original writer mean? By the end of this video, you will know the true meaning of nephesh. You will know why the mistranslation stuck for centuries. You will know how one Hebrew word reshapes your view of life, death, and your own body. A shift changing how you read every chapter after this one. Genesis 2:7 sits inside the second creation account in the book of Genesis. Moses wrote Genesis. Most scholars agree, sometime around 1400 BC, though the events described reach back to the beginning of time. The first readers were Israelites, freshly out of Egypt, forming a new nation. These people needed to know who God was and who they were. Genesis 1 gives you a wide view of creation. 6 days, all things made. Land, sea, sky, plants, and animals, each one spoken into existence. Genesis 2 slows down and focuses on one man, one garden, one moment. Verse 7 sits at the center of the scene, the exact instant God forms Adam from dust and gives him breath. Every idea about human nature in this passage builds off this single verse. Look at the verse itself. God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. 4 actions happen in one sentence. God forms, God breathes, dust becomes flesh, and man becomes something new. The Hebrew word for formed is Yatser, the same word used for a potter shaping clay. God works with his hands here, not with a spoken command alone. The word for ground is Adama, and Adam's name comes directly from this word. Adam means, roughly, ground creature or dirt man. The breath God gives is neshama, the breath of life. Then comes the phrase everyone remembers, man became a living soul. This English phrase hides the real Hebrew words. The actual phrase is Nephesh Chaya. Nephesh Chaya means a living being or a living creature. Man did not receive a soul as a separate part. Man became a whole, breathing, walking creature. The dust plus the breath equals the whole living being. No separate soul got added to a body already alive. Body and breath together produce nephesh. 2 elements from 2 different sources joining into a single, unified creature. This detail changes everything about how you read the rest of Scripture. Notice something else buried in the wordplay here. Adam comes from Adama, ground, and this connection was no accident from the original author's perspective. Every time Adam heard his own name, he heard a small reminder of the dust he came from, humility built into human identity from the first sentence written about mankind. Modern readers skip past wordplay like this, since translation strips these puns away almost completely. Hebrew audiences never miss the joke. Ground creature, walking around a garden, breathing breath borrowed from the same God who shaped the ground. This wordplay reinforces the whole lesson about nephesh, dust and breath joined together as one whole creature, not a proud spirit passing briefly through matter. Now look outside the garden for a moment. Genesis 1:20 describes the creatures in the water. Genesis 1:24 describes the creatures on land. Both verses use the same phrase, Nephesh Chaya, living creature. Fish carry nephesh. Birds carry nephesh. Cattle carry nephesh. Wild animals carry nephesh. Insects carry nephesh. Every breathing creature named in these early chapters carries nephesh. Genesis 2019 shows God forming these animals from the ground too, then bringing them to Adam for naming. The same dust, the same divine forming, and the same word, nephesh, applies to a bird as applies to a man. If nephesh meant an eternal, invisible soul, animals would carry souls too, and few readers want to accept this conclusion. The Hebrew text never draws a sharp line between human life and animal life through the word nephesh alone. What separates man from animal in Genesis 2 is not a soul. What separates man from animal is the image of God, mentioned back in Genesis 1:2-7 and one detail worth slowing down for. Read Genesis 2:7 again, next to Genesis 1:2024. The land brings forth living creatures, the text says. When animals appear, God speaks, and the ground produces life on its own. Adam gets a different process entirely. God forms Adam personally and breathes directly into his nostrils. No other creature in Genesis receives breath straight from God, directly and personally. The Nephesh word stays the same across species, but the method of giving Nephesh to Adam stands apart. God gives Adam nearness, a direct, personal transfer of life, breath moving straight from the Creator's own being into Adam's lungs. This closeness, not a different type of soul, marks the real distinction between man and animal. Adam carries the same kind of life as a bird, but Adam carries this life through a closer bond with the Creator. Here's where the story gets tangled through history. Centuries after Moses, Greek translators produced the Septuagint, an early Greek version of the Hebrew Bible. These translators reached for the Greek word psyche to render nephesh. Psyche already carried heavy philosophical weight in Greek culture. Plato taught, a soul, trapped inside a corrupt body, longs for release at death. This idea shaped Greek thought for generations before Jesus walked the earth. When English translators built the King James Version centuries later, they leaned on this same Greek tradition and chose the word soul. Readers ever since have carried Plato's picture into Genesis 2007 without realizing where the picture came from. Moses never taught a body-present theology. Moses taught dust plus breath equals nephesh, one whole creature, not two separate pieces joined afterward. Nephesh just does more than describe grand spiritual moments. Nephesh describes something as ordinary as hunger. Proverbs 23:2 warns against a man given to appetite, and the Hebrew word behind appetite is nephesis. Ecclesiastes 6:7 says all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the nephesis is not filled. Again using nephesis for basic craving. Isaiah 5:14 pictures the grave opening her mouth without measure, and the Hebrew word for mouth in this verse traces back to nephesi as well, closer to the throat. A word this broad cannot mean a private, invisible spirit tucked away somewhere. Nephesh names the whole person: hungry, thirsty, tired, breathing, wanting. Your stomach growling counts as nephesh activity. Your body needing sleep counts as nephesh activity. Scripture treats these ordinary needs as part of a coherent, single self, not signals from a lower body fighting a higher spiritual soul. This detail matters more than first impressions suggest. Ancient readers heard nephesh and pictured a complete person, needs and all. Modern readers hear soul and picture something abstract, floating above daily needs. Genesis 2007 closes this gap for you, right from the start of the whole Bible. Here's why this detail matters for you today. Nephesh describes a whole being, not a floating soul, so your body counts as part of what you are, not a temporary attachment. Scripture pictures full life as body and breath united, not breath alone. Picture a real conversation. A friend loses her grandmother, and someone offers the common line. She is only a soul now, free from her tired body. Kind words, but words shaped by Plato more than by Moses. Genesis 2007 offers a sturdier comfort. Your grandmother's whole nephesis rests now, and Scripture promises a future day when God restores nephesis completely, body included, stronger than before. This comfort points forward to a real physical reunion, not a vague permanent separation from the body she lived in. The Hebrew text behind Genesis 2007 points somewhere different. Death, in Hebrew thought, means the nephesh stops, the whole being ceases to function, not a spirit leaving the body behind. Christian traditions differ on what happens immediately after death, and this video will not settle the debate for you. What most traditions agree on is the future hope, resurrection, the whole being restored, body included, not a bodiless soul floating forever. Paul writes about this hope in 1 Corinthians 15, describing a raised body, not a released spirit. Your daily habits, your health, your physical choices, none of these count as separate from spiritual life. Your body counts as spiritual life, following the pattern set in Genesis 27. Consider how you treat sleep, food, exercise, rest, and daily work, ordinary rhythms making up the bulk of nephesis life. None of these areas sit outside your walk with God according to this pattern. A nephesi eats, rests, and works as one united creature, not a soul managing a body from within. Two questions come up often here. First, what about verses like Psalm 42, where the writer says, "My soul thirsts for you"? Doesn't this prove nephesh names an inner spiritual part? Look closer at how Hebrew poetry uses nephesh. Writers throughout the Psalms use nephesh as an intense way to say I myself, my whole self, my whole person. My soul thirst means I myself thirst completely, body and mind together, not a spirit separate from the writer speaking. Second question, does this mean humans have no soul at all? Not exactly. Say instead, you are a soul, not you have a soul. The classic phrase gets flipped around. A Nephesh names the whole living person standing in front of you, breathing, thinking, walking, working, laughing, grieving, hoping, every ordinary and extraordinary moment captured in one single word. Nobody splits neatly into two parts here. Let's bring this together. Genesis 2:7 never describes a soul dropped into a body. Genesis 2:7 describes dust and breath combining into one living being. A Nephesh is Chaya. Animals carried the same word. Humans carry this word too, alongside a direct, personal act of breath from God, and a relationship built on nearness. Death stops the Nephesh rather than releasing a trapped spirit. Resurrection restores the whole Nephesh stuff, body and breath together, according to the pattern God set from the beginning, a pattern appearing consistently from Genesis 2 through Revelation 21. This question from the start of this video, why does man become a living soul instead of receiving one, now has an answer. Man does not receive a soul. Man becomes one. Open Genesis 2 tonight and read the whole chapter for yourself. Verse by verse, slowly. Notice every place the text mentions breath, dust, or life. Drop a comment below and tell me, does viewing yourself as a whole Nephesh, rather than a soul stuck inside a body, change how you think about your health or your daily choices? Subscribe for next week's lesson where I break down what happens to the Nephesh after death across the Old and New Testaments.